I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography.
Ted Bundy identified himself as a victim of pornography in his final interview, even suggesting that there are countless people in society like him. This defense clearly aimed to portray him as some sort of victim as well. While working on this documentary, I found myself repeatedly feeling pity for him whenever I watched his videos. His speech, his demeanor, and his seemingly innocent appearance led me to sympathize with him again and again. Many people at the time felt similarly. Indeed, there was even a large group who genuinely believed he might be innocent. In this documentary series, we'll take an in-depth look at Ted Bundy's psychology. How do suppressed urges, when ignored, turn into dangerous obsessions? We'll seek the answer through the perspectives of major psychological theorists like Jung and Freud. By the end, we won't just grasp what drove Bundy and why. Perhaps we'll also begin to question how deeply we bury our own darker impulses and how they might one day emerge. A monster doesn't always look the way we imagine. Sometimes it wears a suit, smiles with confidence, and mingles among the crowd, unnoticed in a disturbingly effortless way. Ted Bundy was one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Yet, if you ask people who knew him in his early years, they'd describe him as polite, courteous, and full of promise. But behind that charm lay a dark world that, to this day, inspires both fear and fascination. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. From his earliest days, he was surrounded by a family secret. For many years, he grew up believing his mother was his sister and that his grandparents were his parents. This strange arrangement was meant to conceal the social stigma of an out-of-wedlock birth. But in trying to protect him, the family elders unwittingly sowed the seeds of a fragmented sense of self. From the outside, Bundy wasn't much different from other children of his era. Friends remember him as generally shy and polite, though at times prone to sudden outbursts of anger or cruelty. As he entered his teenage years, he struggled to forge a consistent identity. He was intelligent, but didn't always apply himself in school. Socially reserved at first, he gradually developed a self-assured facade. This ability to show people the face they wanted to see would later become his greatest weapon. When you first hear Bundy's story, you may ask, how did no one realize just how dangerous he was? The simplest answer might be that he lived his inner and outer worlds on entirely different wavelengths. Through Freud's model, we see his id, primitive instincts, constantly prodding him, while at the same time he strove to create a flawlessly social ego. Meanwhile, the superego was stuck in between. It demanded adherence to social norms, yet failed to suppress the dark impulses surging within him. To avoid being torn between these extremes, Bundy crafted himself a mask. A helpful, well-groomed, polite man. This disguise afforded him social acceptance and hid the predator within. But remember, no matter how meticulously a mask is crafted, if the underlying decay deepens, it will eventually break through. Let's focus on the incident that marked the beginning of these cracks. In college, Bundy met Stephanie, and through his relationship with her, he felt the first spark of that dark shadow within him, as Jung would say. Stephanie's self-assured manner and wealthy background intrigued Bundy, yet their brief romance ended when she found his life goals too uncertain and pulled away. This rejection sparked Bundy's deeply buried sense of anger and worthlessness. Jung's so-called shadow began to grow stronger beneath the mask. Not long after, Bundy embarked on a complete reinvention of himself. He returned to Stephanie as an individual attending prestigious schools, admired in his social circles, and showing great potential. This time, he didn't merely pretend. He fed his internal rage and thirst for revenge. When Stephanie once again became interested in him, right at the moment she felt emotionally tied to him, he disappeared without a word. In that moment, he achieved the victory not just over the renewed relationship, but also a triumph for his lurking shadow. However, that victory only fueled his shadow further. The pain of rejection, combined with the thrill of revenge, merged into a single force. Moving forward, Bundy began to choose young women who resembled Stephanie, those with long, center-parted hair and a similar physique. Every repressed feeling, every obsession, transformed into another murder. Beneath the veneer of normalcy, Jung's concept that what we deny only grows stronger became terrifyingly real. And from that point on, everything escalated. Each new victim that reminded him of Stephanie intensified his drive for control and revenge. He also perfected his perfect gentleman persona. He'd charm people, gain their trust, then strike when they least expected it. Everyone on the outside saw his bright, polished side. The darker self only emerged when he was alone with his victims. Bundy's duality allowed him to evade both the authorities and those close to him for a long time. But it raises the question, how can a monster hide so easily inside a single mind? Which leads us to delve into the psychology of Bundy, the tension between the surface and the depths. Our next step must be to examine how he developed this flawless criminal persona. He didn't just have excellent acting skills, he selected his victims with extreme caution and worked to leave as few traces as possible. His motivations weren't limited to revenge or anger. Above all, he wanted to conquer again and again that particular type of woman who captivated him. His path from that point led to a series of missing persons, posters of lost individuals, and an endless set of mysteries. For a long time, the police lacked conclusive evidence to connect the crime scenes to that famous, charming smile. At this juncture, remembering Jung's shadow theory helps shed some light on the monstrous deeds even Bundy himself found terrifying. At the center of all these events lies another topic we can't overlook: societal hypocrisy. At one time, Ted Bundy even volunteered on a suicide prevention hotline, appearing as a rescuer to those around him, yet secretly laid traps for his victims. This contradiction isn't exclusive to Bundy alone. It also reflects how unwilling we are as a society to confront our own darkness. How could someone recognized as kind, helpful, a good kid from a good family, commit such terrifying crimes? The concept of the mask helps us see how much more layered the human mind is than we suspect. This is why, in the next phase, deepening our exploration of Bundy's crimes will make us once again aware of how dangerous our own repressed urges could be. And, of course, each new clue raises further questions, drawing us toward a final reckoning. Just how good or how evil are we? Bundy's story continues to hold up a chilling mirror for us to find out. Now, Bundy's attempt to manage both his flawless criminal persona and public perception at the same time becomes increasingly striking. On the one hand, young women are disappearing around college campuses and bars. On the other, those who know him keep talking about how wonderful a man he is. Each clue, each missing person notice invites a deeper inquiry. Despite so many suspicions, how did so many people still say, Ted would never do such a thing? The essence lies in Bundy's uncanny mastery at playing the mask.
First of all, I guess I should just ask, how are you doing up here?
It's a short question deserving a long answer. I'm doing well, I feel good, working hard on my case.
Another key factor intensifying the situation was Bundy's hunger for the outside world. As his crimes escalated, no one had any clear sense of what his next move might be. He meticulously disposed of any evidence, leaving only the slightest clues, all while maintaining his cool, polite facade. Here, we seem to witness Freud's id, ego, and superego in a single drama, alongside Jung's shadow. The id feeds off violence and lust, the ego deftly presents a respectable face to the world, and the superego appears invisible or mute. Inevitably, as Bundy's crimes became more conspicuous and fear spread nationwide, the disappearance of women became more than just statistics. They became haunting symbols on newspaper front pages. Meanwhile, Bundy's charming voice and cultured facade remained perplexing obstacles for law enforcement and the public alike. Psychologists suggest two potential reasons for such a dual personality. First, a method to lull the victim into complacency. Second, the drive to reassure himself he was normal. He felt torn between a primal thirst for blood and the desire to appear ordinary. For him, that tension might have been the biggest thrill of all, remaining a fugitive while still enjoying a respectable standing in society. As the attacks grew more violent and frequent, public anxiety peaked. How could someone described as handsome and polite possibly be linked to such horrific crimes? It was precisely at this point that Bundy's pride kicked into high gear. He relished not being caught. He trusted his wits, viewed the police pursuit almost like a game, and each time he slipped away, his sense of being invincible grew. A predator who lives with the fear of capture while simultaneously finding excitement in it makes the Bundy case stand out among other serial killer stories. But the flawless mask was bound to crack eventually. Over the years, as one crime piled upon another, tiny gaps in his disguise started to show. With arrest looming, he grew more reckless, his crimes more cruel, culminating in a high-stakes cat-and-mouse contest with law enforcement. During all of this, Bundy practically performed a double act. Savage and cold-blooded when stalking his prey, yet a completely different person when he appeared in court or faced the cameras. That critical moment, arguably the clincher behind his so-called serial killer genius, was his determination to defend himself even after being apprehended, continuing to play the role of a helpful, innocent man before the public. In reality, this was the final stand of his denial. Instead of confronting his own darkness, he sought the public's sympathy and trust one last time.
Design or intent to affect the death of said Lisa Levy.
My chance to talk to the press.
Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
Claiming he was a victim of pornography was an effort to shift responsibility for his primitive urges onto an external source. Yet the real driver behind his crimes had always been the rage festering inside him, his sense of inadequacy he could never accept, and the revenge fueled by that painful rejection. Today, when examining the Bundy case, we find ourselves facing a mirror with many layers. Not just the cracks in individual psychology, but also society's tendency to search for evil as an external phenomenon. As Jung noted, if we fail to confront, accept, and transform our shadow, this darker side will only grow stronger and surface in the most unexpected ways. Bundy indeed unleashed one of the most dangerous scenarios of this repressed side, an irrepressible hunger for power, lust, and control hidden behind a gentle smile. The next step is to look at how his crimes were prosecuted, at the points where Bundy's own defense mechanisms collapsed, and ultimately how deeply he shook society. His story doesn't end with a serial killer being captured and punished. Instead, in every court session, every confession, and every interview, we witness a stark reminder of how close our own fears and repressed impulses really are. Once Ted Bundy was arrested, his mental labyrinth quickly became the subject of global fascination. Trying to act as his own lawyer in court was yet another move to manipulate both the spectators and the judicial system.
Last week and said, you'd never seen so many memoranda and such well-written briefs. And I agree with you. We've had a veritable avalanche of written documents from the defense in this case.
His speaking skills, knowledge of the law, and polished appearance left people wondering for a while, could he really be innocent? But behind the scenes, the evidence in the prosecution's hands kept mounting. And as disparate disappearances started fitting into the same pattern, a terrifying picture emerged. The fact that both everybody's favorite son and a hidden predator resided within the same body made the trials themselves complex. Bundy believed his innocent acts so strongly that many around him lingered on the "what if this is all a mistake?" doubt for a while. Of course, that game could only hold out so long under the weight of growing evidence. Between advances in forensic science and testimonies from witnesses, the walls closed in on him. Not just the physical evidence, but also accounts from people who knew his victims brought to light the cold-blooded nature beneath Bundy's friendly guy mask. Some who had known him began recalling small inconsistencies, sudden flashes of anger in hindsight. No one could ignore the obvious truth anymore. This man wasn't just sweet words and a handsome face, By his own admission, he was obsessed with control and driven by bloodthirsty impulses. The trial turned into a media storm of historic proportions. Television stations broadcast the proceedings live, and Bundy's face appeared on the front pages of newspapers. Some were stunned, asking, how could a good-looking guy commit such savage murders? While others declared, we're staring the devil in the face. This polarization resembled a collective manifestation of Jung's shadow concept, affecting society as well as individuals. People bundled everything they feared into one figure, driving them to either distance themselves from him or, on the contrary, believe he was innocent to feel safer. Thus, there were those who wanted Bundy executed and those who viewed him as a wrongfully accused victim, causing a stark divide throughout that period. Yet the facts continued to expose the traces of that dark shadow. Bundy never let go of the vanity that led to his downfall. Even until the last moment, he denied the charges and tried to redirect blame to external factors such as pornography. He never confronted the real issue, the rejection and sense of worthlessness that fueled his violence and thirst for revenge. Freud's warning about repressed desires materialized in a horrifying way with Bundy. No matter how hard you try to bury them, urges rotting in the subconscious will eventually erupt, shattering the mask you call yourself. Ultimately sentenced to death, Bundy continued to play the victim role in his final interviews, offering yet another excuse, another explanation. Neither those words nor his signature smile, however, brought any solace to the families of his victims. Perhaps his greatest curse was suffocating in his own perfect illusion. On the day of his execution, crowds gathered outside the prison, creating a scene that would linger in America's collective memory. Some waved justice signs in celebration, while others protested that it was too easy to take a human life. Thus, the Bundy saga became more than just a tragic account of his life. It also laid bare the contradictions, repressed fears, and the challenges of confronting evil that lie within all of us. And so, all these events elevate Ted Bundy's story beyond mere crime history into a deeper psychological and social study. Every killer has a face, and every suppressed emotion exacts a price. Bundy's tale challenges us to confront the darkness within ourselves and within our collective shadow as a society. How is it that someone with such a gentle smile could commit such horrifying crimes? The real dread might be knowing that evil isn't just out there. It can lie waiting within us too. And in the end, one question remains more unsettling than all the rest. What hidden storm might rage behind an innocent smile? May this video serve as a bold journey's final word in search of that answer. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more.